some more information about my grandmother, Dorothy. She was born Dorothy Geraldine Fowler, and she married Oscar Howes, and then when she left him, she divorced him, and she married the love of her life. It was Samuel Light, Samuel Bertzel Light. So anyway, it's like I just want to share a couple pictures with you and talk about her a little bit more. Anyway, she this is her. This is Pride and Joy. This was her house in Gardena on 164th Street. I think it's 1037 164th Street, and this was after Pappy had passed away. And because they bought this house, I think around 1958, and then he got bored and they managed an apartment building in downtown Los Angeles. And then she came back after he died and moved back into that house. Here's a really nice picture I just ran across. This is her and my mother. You know, it's like, I don't know when this was taken, but this was a long time ago because my mother's a rather young woman there. But that's my mother, Joanne. And my mother's name was pronounced Joanne. I guess it was common back then. It's spelled like Joan. It's Joan. But I apparently it was common back then, you know, to just be, you know, for it to be spelled that way, but pronounced Joanne. So anyway, that's her and her mother. And anyway, so it's like, so I think let's see. My mother, I remember her telling me that she was known for speaking very proper English. You know, her English was very good. You know, there was no slang or anything. I don't really recall. She actually, I was 16 when she died, and so there's some details I don't remember about her, but she had very proper English. And one of the things she did for me is because my mother ended up being left-handed and I'm right-handed. She actually taught me how to tie my shoes. That's one of the things I really remember about her. It's like when I was a little kid to tie my shoes. It's like she did it because it was easier for her to show me how to tie my shoes because my mother was left-handed and she was right-handed. So that was kind of a fond memory. I remember her doing it at her place in when they were living in on 164th Street. You know, I remember her doing that. Let's see. Yeah, and then, so, let's see. So my grandmother always, you know, it's like we would get these sewing projects at school, you know, it's back when, I don't think they even do this anymore, but in junior high you had to take like sewing classes if you were a girl, and, which probably they should still do, so, you know, because it's a practical thing. So anyway, it's like, I was not the best seamstress or anything, but my grandmother was really into it. My mother to a certain point too. But, you know, she would help me with my projects, you know, my junior high school sewing projects and stuff. And in some cases, she did most of the sewing, and I would just turn it in. And I remember the one project was an apron, and she actually, I think, made the apron or did most of it anyway. And it's like, I still wish I had that apron, but I think it's long gone. So, but it's like, and then we made pot holders. And just some other oddball stuff. You know, it's just like, you know, kind of, you know, it's like just kind of, yeah, it's like, and then the other thing she did is like she also made, some of mine and Nanny's clothes. You know, she would make, you know, our dresses and stuff like that. You know, my mother did too, but you know, she would make some of the dresses, and they were kind of, we never really liked the dresses much because they were kind of frumpy looking, and you know, it's like it was kind of embarrassing to wear that stuff to school. One of the odd things I remember about, you know, when she was living on 164th Street is my mother, at one point, it's like, this is when, I know some houses still have wallpaper, but not very many. But this was an old house. The house was, like I said, it was in like the old downtown area of Gardena, right next, just above Gardena Boulevard. And part of the history was, I think the house was built around 1903 or something. So it was one of the oldest houses in Gardena. And some of them are still there. Some have gotten torn down, unfortunately, some of the old houses. But that one's still there. It's actually owned now by the Catholic Church, so I don't think it's going to go anywhere. And they actually just repainted it recently, and it looks pretty good, you know. So, and I think seminary students live there, you know. So anyway, anyway, one of the things about the wall, going back to the wallpaper thing, it's like I distinctly remember my mother hanging wallpaper, which is kind of just, you know, it's kind of an art to it, I guess. But she knew how to do wallpaper, and I remember her like laying out the wallpaper on the walls and stuff. So um, uh, let's see, what else? She met Pappy. It's like one of the things about it's like maybe I'll save that for later, how she met Pappy and stuff. But she, you know, I'll just talk about it now. Anyway, she met Pappy. Apparently, my mother told me that when they were kids, that Pappy he lived in the area. He had a farm, you know, and he would come by there where they lived, and this was in Coldwater, Michigan. And he would walk by, and he would talk to her and her older sister, and then of course, you know, my grandmother would come out and I guess talk to him too and stuff. And so that's apparently how they met. It's like that's, you know, the only real story I got out of my mother a few years back. Was that he would come by, walk by, and he'd start talking to them. Then he'd start talking to my grandmother too. Got to know my grandmother and stuff. So. And so anyway, it's like there was a perfume she liked, and it was called Tabu. And even though she, at the time, I gave it one of her probably last birthdays, I actually bought her a bottle of Tabu, and I just, you know, it was like probably for Christmas or her birthday. And it was probably like maybe a year or two before she passed away. And I know she appreciated it. It's one of those things but at that point she probably wasn't really wearing perfume or anything, but I know she appreciated the fact that I got her the perfume. So, but anyway, it's like, I think that's, I think I already talked about the fact she always made sure we had Christmas presents. My mother took care of her in the end of her life. My mother took care of her the last few years of her life. So she would have house you know, like helpers come in. Like a couple of times she had a woman live in that a caregiver. You know, it's like would come in and take care of her and stuff. But lots of times, you know, that person would leave or whatever. So my mother always picked up the slack, and you know, and I think near the end it was basically mostly my mother taking care of her until she passed away. Yeah, because she, you know, unfortunately she ended up in a wheelchair, and she had some strange skin disease. I don't know what the hell it was. I was talking to somebody I knew years ago. He was like Sam's age. His name's Bill Andis, and he told me that she had gotten some treatment some years before down in Mexico or something, and that he thought that it came from that. I don't know if that's really what it was, but one of the things about her is that she. I remember when she was the story my mother relayed to me is one time when she was in the hospital, or you know, she was some specialist came in and looked at her and said, you know, it's like they, you know, it's like didn't know what it was or whatever, and he didn't do anything for her or anything. And then afterwards, she refused to pay the bill because he didn't do anything. It's like good for her. So anyway, she had hazel eyes. I remember actually I have her driver's license somewhere. I remember her telling us that her hair was actually light in color when she was young, and it got darker and darker. You know, it's like it was probably like a darker brown color, you know, as an adult, as she got older. I know she had a tough life and was probably the most happy when she was married to her second husband, Samuel Light. I think that was the happiest years of her life was when she was married to him, because I know she had an older sister, Mary, and two younger brothers, Kenny and Charles. She was close with Charles. He was like the youngest, but she always said that she got treated differently than the firstborn daughter, Mary. That was like apparently her parents' favorite, and apparently was obvious and stuff. And I remember her telling us that she never played favorites with her daughters or anything because that's what happened to her. So she was very, very well aware of that how damaging it can be. So. So she, she treated them both the same way and was close to both of them. Um, and I think that's it for now. It's like I'll probably do another one more on her because she was a really fantastic grandmother. I can't say enough good things about her. She was always good to us, and she always made sure we had Christmas presents and so on. And she would spoiled us, and she would make us cookies. She made a lot of bakery stuff and everything, and she really cared about us.